The next bit of rounding we're going to look at is rounding to a certain number of significant figures. Okay, so we've looked at rounding to decimal places, and this does follow a lot of the same rules as rounding to decimal places. The difference is knowing what a significant figure is compared to a decimal place. We'll have a wee look at that first. Okay, so any number that you count with, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, are significant. Zeros are the only number that can be either significant or not significant. Okay, zeros are significant if they're between two other significant digits or that are trailing at the end of a decimal. Zeros can also be counted as significant if you have already rounded and you need a zero in to find your decimal place, because then it says that they give you an accuracy. So that also means that they are significant. Okay, so if you look at 640, chances are it's got two significant figures. This zero at the end isn't significant. Same if we look at 6,400,000, it's still only got the two significant figures. All these zeros here are not significant. But if we look at 604, because the zero is in between the 6 and the 4, that one has three significant figures. Looking at some decimal points then, if we've got 6.4, it's got two significant figures. Adding in some zeros, if we've got 6.04, that one's got three significant figures. The zero there is in between two other significant numbers. And the one at the end, 6.40. That zero must also be significant because you don't need it. 6.4, 6.40 are the same. So that's telling you that it is accurately rounded to the three significant figures. So that one has three significant figures. Again, it makes a lot more sense when we do some examples. So let's have a go. Okay. If we're asked to round to one significant figure, that means we have one number other than zero. So we can ignore any zeros to begin with. When we get to our first non-zero number, that will be our first significant figure. For two significant figures, it would then be the next two numbers. Three significant figures, there'll be three numbers other than zero, and so on. Zeros can be added, which are not counted as significant, to keep your place value, to keep it as something like 200 instead of 2. Remember right the way back at the beginning of rounding, I said we want to keep our number as close as possible to the number that we're rounding. Okay, so we're going to look at rounding these to one significant figure, two significant figures, and three significant figures. So the first one is 2450. I'm rounding to one significant figure. So looking at this, first number here is a 2. That's my first significant figure. So I'm going to look to the 4 to decide whether I'm going to round that 2 up or leave it the same. Normal rules of rounding now apply. 4 is less than 5, so that stays as a 2. But I can't just leave it as 2. 2 does have one significant figure, but it's nowhere near 2,450. Remember, we want it as close as possible. Here I've got 1, 2, 3 numbers after that 2. I'm going to fill in those spaces with zeros. I'm going to stick with one significant figure just now, and then we'll look at 2 and 3. Okay, so next one we've got 57,382. My first significant figure here is the 5. After the 5 we've got a 7. 7's bigger than 5, so I'm going to push that up to a 6. So that's my one significant figure. Here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, so I'm going to fill those in with zeros to get 60,000. Next one we've got 19.74. Again, I just want one number other than zeros. So looking at this one here, my first significant number is 1. After the 1 is a 9. So the 9's going to push that 1 up to a 2. So we get 2. Then I have one digit up to my decimal point. I don't want to fill in zeros after my decimal point because zeros after decimal points become significant. So I just want to make that one 20. Okay. Next one. First significant figure is that 4. That 0 doesn't count. zeros at the beginning of numbers are not significant. So my first significant figure here is 4. Keep the 0 in at the beginning, because that's keeping my place value for me. After my 4 was a 0, so that doesn't round that 4 up. Okay. Going back to the beginning then, but this time looking at 2 significant figures. We've got 2,450. If I just clear my scribbles away, there we go. Can't get my pen back now. Right, there we go. I'm now looking at 2,450, but 2 significant figures. So there's 1, 2. Straight after the 4 is a 5, so that's going to round that 4 up to 5. So I get 2, 5, 2 spaces left. So I fill those in with zeros. Next one, 5, 7 is my 2 significant figures. After that I've got 3, so that doesn't change anything. So I've got 5, 7, 1, 2, 3 spaces left. So I fill them in with zeros. 2 significant figures this time. I've got 1 and 9, so I've got 19. After the decimal point is a 7, so that's going to push that up. After 19 we get 20. Don't want to fill in after the decimal point because they then become significant, so I just leave it as 20. In this case, 19.74 rounds to 20 both to 1 significant figure and 2. In this case the 0 is significant here and this one isn't. Okay, 0.409 to 2 significant figures. There's 1, there's 2. After the 0 is a 9, that's going to push that up to a 1. So we leave the 0 in at the beginning, 0.41. Let's go through them once more, but this time to 3 significant figures. So that means we want 3 non-zero numbers. So the first one, let me clear again. With 2, 4, 5. After the 5 was a 0, so it's going to just stay as 2,450. Next one, we've got 57,382. So 1, 2, 3 takes me to the 3. After the 3 is an 8, so that's going to push that 3 up to a 4. So we get 5, 7, 4. I've got 2 spaces left, so I'm going to fill those in with zeros. 19.74. We count along 1, 2, 3. So get 19.7. After the 7 is a 4. That's why it just stays as a 7. Don't put 0 on this time because it's after a decimal point. Last one, 1, 2, 3 is all my numbers. It doesn't change. Okay, let's try this in context then. We want to find the area of a rectangle measuring 54.5 centimetres in length, 12.4 centimetres in breadth, and we want to give a final answer to 2 significant figures. Okay, area of a rectangle, so hopefully one you remember. Find the area of a rectangle, we do length times breadth. My length is 54.5, my breadth is 12.4, definitely one for the calculator this time. It's 54.5 times 12.4 is, and if you haven't used a calculator like this before, this SD button here changes it from a fraction into a decimal for you. So it's 675.8 centimetres because it's area per centimetres squared. That should be a 2, not a scribble. There we go, that's better. Final answer, we want 2 significant figures. So there's my 2 numbers. I've got 6, 7. After the 7 is a 5, so that's going to push that up to 6, 8. I've got 1 extra place before the decimal point, so I want to fill in that with a 0. That's to 2 significant figures. Okay, I'll leave you to practice some of these. Again, any problems, please get in touch.